Good morning to everybody who is watching this, and pray that we feel the risen Christ with us. Does Easter seem a long time ago? It's only 2 weeks actually, and on the 2 Sundays and at the Bible studies during those 2 weeks, we have been looking and studying the times that Jesus appeared to the disciples and his friends. Today's reading takes place in Galilee. The others were in Jerusalem, but now the disciples are in Galilee, where they lived, and they were waiting. What were they thinking? Did they talk to each other about the events of the happenings of the past 2 weeks? Did they wonder when they would see Jesus again? What do we do after a wonderful experience? Maybe you've been on a retreat and have really felt uplifted. Perhaps you have been in a service where the worship was wonderful. And then what did you do next? What did you think? Remember when Jesus took Peter, James and John to the top of a mountain? He was transfigured in front of them, and they thought they saw people who were Moses and Elijah. It was such an experience that Peter blurted out, "Let's build 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses and one for Elijah." He just didn't know what to say. Maybe he wanted to keep it within that experience. But Jesus took them back down from the top of the mountain, took them to the people. Now, the disciples are wondering what was going to happen next. What did Jesus want them to do? When would they see him? So I can imagine the disciples saying suddenly, "Well, what shall we do now then?" And Peter answered, "Well, I'm going fishing." And the others replied that they would go too. Peter perhaps wanted to get on with life, wanted to get back to what for him used to be normal before the 2 years that he was travelling around with Jesus. He was at a loss to know what to do in that situation. So they went back to what they knew. But this time, it didn't work. They caught nothing all night. And you can remember perhaps the other story of that in Luke chapter 5. Someone on the shore called to them and told them what to do. And we're told they did not know who he was. And you can understand that because remember that Mary didn't know it was Jesus when she first saw him. And the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus didn't either. We can also remember that when Jesus first met these disciples, they were fishing. And Jesus said that he wanted them to work with him. On this morning and night, they were working without Jesus. When Jesus told them what to do, they had a miraculous catch of fish. So John knew who could have done that. "It is the Lord," he said. So then what did they do? Well, Peter jumped in the water, but the others continued to haul in the nets that were full of fish. And we're told they saw a fire ready for cooking the fish. And then this person, Jesus, invited them to bring more fish to cook. But then we're told Peter actually went to help them bring the fish in. We don't have to do the work ourselves. Jesus was already cooking bread and fish, and he helped them catch more fish. And at this point, the narrative says, no one dared to say, "Who are you?" even though John had already said it was the Lord. Jesus is different. He had already shown them that by walking into a room that had been locked, and now he's cooking. And then notice the words next. Jesus took bread and gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. Took bread and gave it to them. We as disciples don't decide what we will do next. We wait and see what the Lord calls us to do. So we must remember that whatever we decide to do next, our mission will only be effective with God, and expect it to be very effective as well. We're told that there was a great number of fish. John does not write this kind of thing without a reason. By this time, Peter must have been wondering what would happen next. He began to walk with Jesus, and he knew that something had to be said between the two of them. In his mind, he had probably gone back to what happened near another fire. The 3 times that Jesus asks Peter if he loved him echoed the 3 times Peter disowned. And then Jesus didn't reprimand him. He gave the answer to Peter as to what he would do next. Jesus gave Peter a job, so Peter knew he was forgiven. He was being entrusted to share the ministry of Jesus. When Jesus had appeared to them in Jerusalem, he said, "As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you." These words are said to us too. And therefore, as Peter, in verses 18 and 19, hears the cost of following Jesus, that's for us too. He calls us, he tells us the cost, but he's with us. At the beginning of John's Gospel are the words, "We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." We've seen this, and over the wonderful experience, we sang several songs and hymns proclaiming his glory. So, what should we do now? Someone has written, "A Christian gospel ends properly not with the appearance of the risen Lord to his disciples and their belief in him, but with the confident statement that his mission to the world, undertaken at his command and under his authority, will be the means by which many are saved."